It's reported that our good friend Danny Ainge and the Utah Jazz could be looking to take offers for Lauri Markkanen. Don't bring it up, but we're going to talk about it on today's show.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast.
What are they going to say now?
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the good word, everyone? Thanks for making Locked On Warriors part of your day and a part of your week. We are free and available wherever you get your audio podcasts. You can also check us out on YouTube. We go live, and if you're hanging out with us live right now, throw some questions in the chat. If you're watching after the fact, pop in those comments, subscribe to the show. We very much appreciate it. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com. for 50% off your first year. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Charlie Walter, formerly of 95.7 The Game in the Bay Area. That's the flagship radio station for Golden State. Also cover the team and a championship run for CBS News Bay Area. A Tuesday guest of ours, a reoccurring friend of the program, Evan Giddings, a co-host of mine at 95.7 The Game, producer. You hear him on the calls for the St. Mary's Gales men's basketball team, and he joins the program today to talk about Lauri Markkanen. After I called him Lauri Markkanen for years, last offseason, I figured out how to finally say his name, Evan, because he was such a hot topic. There were the ties to Golden State. There was so many weeks of the summer where we thought it could happen, and here the Jazz are reportedly taking offers for Lauri Markkanen this summer to at least see what they can get. And I'm here to say, first of all, good to see you. Second of all, can we just shut up about Lauri Markkanen? It's not going to happen, right?
It's his name. I think the reason why I had to remember how to say it is just because it's a name I never wanted to hear again. It became Voldemort. It became a name that must not be uttered around Golden State. And yet I wake up today, Chuck, and I see the Bovada odds-on favorite for Lauri Markkanen are the Golden State Warriors, and I wanted to put my head through this plate glass window. I mean, I when is this going to stop?
They can't do it. We just had the financial guru, Eric Pincus, on the show, and if you haven't listened to that, it was 2 episodes ago, Friday's episode. Go ahead and listen to that. He gives you great stuff on the salary cap, and if you're a Warriors fan that's just kind of confused by all the moving parts and the financial aspect of it, that's a good one to listen to. And the deal is that they don't have anything that the Jazz would want in terms of, like, the Jazz, the only reason they'd be getting rid of Lauri is to make a financial decision, right? They don't want to pay him on a team that probably isn't ready to win yet, and he's making big time bucks. The Warriors aren't in any position to take on that contract. Even if you throw together the package that you would have a season ago, had that deal gotten done, Moses, Kuminga, Podziemski, it's not even close to bringing in the same amount of money. Not even close. It's just an impossibility. But Bovada has now given us Porter Jr. They've given us him. And who was the third one? Naz Reid. So apparently the Warriors are going to have the Monstars running out next year if Bovada gets their way.
Yeah, it was funny. MPJ was kind of far out. Nas, we took some time to legitimately break down because I still think that's a possibility. Lauri Markkanen is just out of left field. But what it does tell me, Chuck, is chalk one up for Mike Dunleavy Jr. Sometimes the best trades are the ones that you don't make. And while I don't think that only Markkanen was the one that they wanted, I think it's been reported Plan A was both Paul George and Markkanen together. That is a ship that I'm glad has sailed, and I hope never docks ever at Chase Center, because Lauri Markkanen is someone that you look at now, and last year he was a nice piece. He was on a decent deal, and now he's an overpriced power forward on a horrible basketball team. I think there's a couple of pieces on the Jazz that are intriguing to me, but the 7-foot finisher or whatever they were calling him for the last couple of years, that's someone I don't want on my team right now.
He's good. Last year, it would have been a completely different situation because his money doesn't hit at the time. So he's not making a whole ton, but as someone that's making upwards of, I don't know the exact number, but I want to say it's 40 million, something along those lines. Like, the Warriors can't take on these types of players unless they move on from a Draymond or a Jimmy. And if Shams gets his way and it's actually the craziest offseason of all time, we start seeing 4-team, 5-team, 6-team deals. Who knows what the Warriors could pivot to? But I don't think they're pivoting off Jimmy Butler, like him and Steph Curry. And I would think Draymond Green too. But if that one came to fruition, it wouldn't shock me nearly as much as if Curry or Butler went. But the Curry Butler package together, like I think they're running this one back, and Lauri Markkanen just does not fit in with those two in terms of the financials that matter big time. Like they can make a trade to bring him in, but they really can't unless it involves Draymond or Jimmy. And I don't think the Jazz would be keen on bringing in Draymond Green with the position they sit in now. It's not, I don't think. I know they would. Like, that makes no sense.
The one thing that could intrigue the Jazz, if we're really going to go down this road, it is the fact that the Warriors are able to trade 4 first-round picks as of draft night. And if you're Danny Ainge, I don't think you really care about Albatross contract at this point because you have no intention of winning. The moment you lost out on the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, you might have reset your clock even further back. So I think that the Warriors' first-round selections are absolutely top of mind for Danny Ainge, and that was something that would have hypothetically been involved last year, including Kuminga, Moody, Podziemski, whoever was in that deal. But if I'm the Warriors, have to be very careful about which first-round picks I send out this offseason. And for someone like Lauri Markkanen, who is, to your point, he's not a bad player. He probably is a decent fit, can shoot the ball, stretch the floor.
If it was as simple, dude, as trading a few draft picks and saying, hey, you guys can have Kevon Looney, we'll take in Lauri Markkanen, sign me up. But it doesn't work that way. The aprons just restrict the Warriors from making that deal unless you were to sign GP2, Kevon Looney, trade Moody's money, trade Kuminga. You would have to add so much together to even make that financial situation and transaction work, because the money's got to be equal coming in with where the Warriors stand.
Yeah, but also in general, I just don't think it's a player that it's gonna handicap you so much if you went through some sort of financial hurdle. It just, like, the Warriors, Chuck, to me, I think the bigger takeaway I have from this is people feel like they're being promised some sort of massive change, and I guess I'm here to tell you, I don't think that change gonna come. Sam Cook, it isn't. Like, the Warriors are in a position now where they have so much money, almost 75% of their cap wrapped up in the 3 players, that, to your point, unless you want to get off of one of those guys, which I never think was originally the plan, the Warriors are in kind of run it back mode. And there could be some tinkering, some decent players out there. The draft, as much as we like to poo-poo the 41st pick, and I know we'll talk about, that's going to be important for them. But the Warriors are in a position where they kind of chose which direction they were going down when the moment they traded for Jimmy Butler. And so I don't necessarily hate it. I don't love it, but I think it's just the reality of where they're at come this summer.
All right, let's talk about some of the Warriors' options, how they can bring in different players this offseason. We'll get into an NBA draft hot player name selection, Sion James from Duke. We brought him up yesterday. I'm going to ask Evan Giddings about him. We'll talk a little about him, but also in terms of the bird right players, the Warriors with Kuminga, with Kevon Looney, with Gary Payton II. Who could they be bringing back this upcoming season? Let's talk a little GP2, as he's kind of the first domino that could fall. That's coming up on Locked On Warriors.
Destroy Jimmy and Domino's. I know Jimmy drinks great wine.
All right, NBA fans, it is that time of the year, NBA championships, and we got a slam dunk deal from DashPass for their members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. It's called They Swoosh and You Score. Anytime a player drops 50 or more points in a playoff game, DashPass members score a free 3-piece crispy tender combo from Wingstop the very next day. All you do is place a $20 order or more, use the code WINGSTOP50 at checkout, and that combo is yours. Crispy, delicious. And did I mention totally free? Offers valid noon to midnight the day after a game. Terms do apply. If you've ever looked at your delivery fees and thought there's got to be a better way, it's DashPass. You get $0 delivery fees and exclusive perks like this one all season long. How much could you save over a year? Check it out. Here's the play. Sign up for DashPass to unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. When a player scores 50 plus in a playoff game, DashPass members can grab a 3-piece free crispy tender combo from Wingstop the next day. All you do, Place $20 order or more. Use code WINGSTOP50. That's DashPass. Your door to more savings, more flavor, more ways to win. Terms do apply. Let's get back to the show. So enough about Lauri Markkanen. Let's talk about some players that could actually be on the Warriors' radar this offseason. And they don't have a ton of ways to bring in talent this offseason, unfortunately, with the situation that they're currently in. The mid-level could be 15 million if they stay under a certain threshold, but the most likely is 6 million. And if they go way over the second apron or just over the second apron, they're paying the double the money there with how much they're going over in penalties. And not only that, the issue becomes all you can do is add mid-level players. So sure, if you found a way somehow to bring in Lauri, he was your guy, you traded 5 players out to get him, whatever, all you could bring in are vet minimum guys. In terms of mid-level players, one of those guys, Gary Payton II, he's probably more like a vet minimum contract at this point, but the Warriors can obviously retain him and not have the penalties because of that, as he is their guy. He's a bird rights player, Kevon Looney as well. Let's start with Gary Payton II. First of all, how much do you see him commanding on the open market? Or let's say he comes back to Golden State. How much realistically you think he's getting paid after having a pretty nice contract for Payton? It was that Blazers contract right after he won the NBA championship with the Warriors, and it was upwards of 10 million.
Yeah, I think GP2 he's a vet min player. And this year, I thought he actually did a pretty good job in the hardest area for him to kind of check boxes, and that was playing games. I mean, I think Gary Payton II over the last 4 seasons and kind of dating back to, 3 seasons, really dating back to the championship, has only had 1 year where he's been on the floor for the majority of his time. And Gary Payton II is, look, he's a culture fit. I think he's a fan favorite. No one would besmirch the Warriors for trying to bring him back. He's obviously a Steve Kerr favorite. But you can't give him anything more than the vet min. And if that's out there, I think he takes it from another team. I just don't see another team offering him that kind of position. And so, I think it would honestly be mutually beneficial for them to figure something out. The thing also about Payton is he fills a roster spot. Last year, he was filling a roster spot at about $9 million. And he was more, I think, potentially a player that they would involve in a trade than a legitimate game changer. But this team lacks defense. This team lacks, I don't want to use him as a size player, Chuck, but he absolutely adds rebounding, finishing around the rim. Like, this is kind of a reflection of the Warriors roster, but you can make a case that Gary Payton II, outside of Jimmy Butler, was the best finisher around the rim that they have on their team. So that's something they have to address. And if they can't get it on the open market, well, then you got to think about how you can retain it. And Gary Payton II is a clear fit for me.
What do you think in terms of, because you mentioned something that's very important about Gary Payton II is the fact that he had his healthiest season since the championship year?
62 games.
62 games for Gary Payton II. In terms of a player, like, let's just throw out some names. D'Anthony Melton's obviously one. Lonzo Ball is obviously one. Robert Williams is another name that comes to mind. Players that had really good trajectory but have been injured for 1 season or 2 seasons, or in the case of Lonzo Ball, how many times has he been injured? Williams, too, since the NBA championship, where I thought he was like a game changer against the Warriors. He was someone I would have loved to have had at age 27, whatever he may be right now, but he just can't stay on the floor, can't stay healthy. With the precarious position that the Warriors are in right now, where they need some value contracts and they need him to work out, kind of like they had in 22, with an Otto Porter who never stayed healthy, comes to the Warriors, has the lone healthy year of his career, and then just falls off the face of the earth, literally retires after that season and getting a contract with Toronto. How inclined would you be, if you were a decision maker for this organization, to gamble on not only one, but maybe a couple of these quote unquote damaged goods, talented players?
Well, I think they're in a position where they have to gamble. The one thing about Otto that is a little bit different than some of the players out there is he was 27 or 28 years old. So yes, he did exit the league relatively quickly after, but he was still in his relative prime when the Warriors signed him. There aren't a ton of players like that out there. And the one thing, Chuck, the Warriors have to be wary of, which they could be a little bit more lenient about, say in 2022, is their best players are, I don't want to say injury prone, but outside of Curry, Draymond and Jimmy don't play a ton of games. So you can take flyers on vet min players, but you have to make sure that you at least get them for 75% of their games. Like I would love to get a Robert Williams, for example. I think he's a good rim protector. And when he's on the floor, he's effective, but he can't stay on the floor. And the Warriors need players that are going to play in games because odds are, if you look at Draymond Green, this year, I think he played the most games since his last contract extension eligible year. Jimmy Butler's averaged 55 regular season games his last 6 seasons and didn't play more than 60, I think, combined in the regular season this year. So you can't just throw stuff at a wall and see if it's going to work. You need guys that are going to play. And so that's why I would be a little more, I guess, inclined to try and find some player. Like this is where the Melton deal really, or the Melton acquisition really hurt, is like that's supposed to be a player at age 25 that can give you 70 games. And he obviously tore his ACL. I don't know if they can afford to miss on a player like that again, because they're going to have to account for the entire 82 game season. Like someone like Buddy Hield was a blessing. Yes, he's not a great, I don't know. He's an up and down player, but he played all 82. And the Warriors have to be able to find some guys that are just going to be able to stay on the floor. So vet min flyers, I'm not against, but they have to be the right ones, Chuck, in my opinion.
The squeeze that's coming. Pincus, when we had him on the show the other day, he was talking about the squeeze of some of these players that probably talent-wise could demand a little bit more money in a typical season, but with the way that the CBA is set things up and teams lacking the cap space to, or just not wanting to go over the first apron and take on penalties, or for that matter, go over the second, whatever position they're in, some just not even going over the luxury tax in general. It makes a lot of players that may be worth $15-20 million in a given year pretty interesting, because if there's no market for them all of a sudden, we're talking, mid-July or whenever it may be, these players may just have to take these deals. They may have to look at a team like the Warriors and say, all right, I'm going to have a role there. I can play there. I can sign a short-term deal to kind of get my value back on track. I can potentially compete for an NBA championship with vets like Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler and Draymond and Steve Kerr as the head coach and the second most valuable franchise in American sport, and live in the Bay Area. There are a lot of positives there. Who are some of these players that you could potentially be looking at that may get squeezed down and be affordable for the Warriors? Although right now it seems like that there's no chance that the Dubs could get someone with that type of talent and ability.
I mean, as far as players that are going to get squeezed, I mean, you're looking at players on bad teams, quite honestly. You're looking at players. You're looking at players that are on their way kind of out of particularly bad situations. The Jazz is a team that I wouldn't necessarily look at and dismiss. And while this player is not a small salary player, to me, someone like Jordan Clarkson would be a really interesting ad for the Warriors. He's someone that's a combo guard that can score, get his own shot, whether he's coming off the bench or starting in spots, is someone that gives you a lot of what Jordan Poole gave you a few years ago. That's a player that's kind of been thrown to the wayside because of his contract, and the Jazz have had to eat it. But if the Warriors are intrigued in that kind of acquisition and would be able to make something work with Danny Ainge, I absolutely think that he's someone that could help you. Players that are getting squeezed out. The Celtics have a ton of guys right now that I think they're trying to weigh how much they want to get rid of them. The issue is obviously they're making a ton of money. So, to me, if I'm trying to really target one archetype of player, it is that playmaking, either combo or defensive-minded guard. And so to me, the top of my wish list, and I know that we have talked about some of the guys they could draft to in the past, Chuck, but again, it's going to be at the point guard position. So my two players would be either Drew Holiday or Jordan Clarkson. I think Drew Holiday fits their timeline a little bit more and is pretty pricey, but Jordan Clarkson also fits in a different sort of way, the kind of player that I'd be looking for if I was Golden State.
There was some mention about just some of the veterans in general. He mentioned the name like Brooke Lopez and Chris Paul, and obviously, Paul, you've been there, done that. But some of these older guys that at this point are lower end vet minimum deal guys that could make sense. I thought another thing that was brought up that was pretty fascinating when it comes to the Warriors is just the position that they're in right now with the 41st draft pick and some of the players that they could be looking at. Like, what would you do in terms of, you mentioned prototype of player that you'd be going for, but in terms of best available talent, position, everything along these lines, I think there's one mold of a player that makes 100% sense. I brought him up on yesterday's show. I want to bring him up to you and hear your thoughts on him. That's Sion James of Duke, someone that isn't outstanding at anything, but he's pretty good at everything. And I would say he's definitely an above average, a plus defender that projects to be a pretty good one in the NBA. And he's a connector. We love that word in the Bay Area on offense. Someone that Kerr may feel pretty confident about from day one. He's a Duke guy. So a Mike Dunleavy, you would have to imagine someone that Dunleavy has seen and helped him come to the Bay Area for a workout and likes his game. So we're going to break down all things Sion James. That's coming up on Locked On Warriors. All right, today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Let me tell you a little bit about one of our sponsors. They do good stuff. If you have not checked out Monarch Money, now is the time. If you wonder where all your money goes, dining out, online shopping, services, it's easy to lose track, and that is where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO. It gives you full visibility and control over your finances. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So stop managing your money and start building wealth. You'll realize surprising insights like how much you're spending on services. You don't juggle multiple apps. It has everything all in one app, including tracking spending, checking finances, and planning long-term goals. And you can easily collab with your partner. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Sion James, the Duke Blue Devil that averaged 4 boards per game, 5 boards per game, averaged 14 a couple seasons ago at Tulane when he was kind of their main option, was the 4th option for the Duke Blue Devils, but started and played huge minutes as a glue guy for a team that went to the Final Four and had what it took to win a national championship. And he's one of many collegiate guys that have played second, third, fourth fiddle on good teams that then have the opportunity to go to the NBA and are asked to do kind of the same thing, play the fourth, fifth fiddle. Do you like someone like this, or would you rather have a player that's kind of proved that they can give the Warriors everything they need at the collegiate level to a higher scale? Because Sion James, he can do a little bit of everything, but the question is, can he do a lot of everything?
Yeah, I think that's honestly just as close to a perfect player as far as, his both skill set, but also just like the type of player he is. He's a 5-year guy, so he's older, but he's played a lot of college. He's also had to fill multiple roles because he was originally with Tulane, transferred to Duke, I think after averaging close to 14 points per game. So he's had to adjust. Like, he's someone that has fit in and also helped a winning program in multiple stops. I think he upped his 3-point percentage from 38 to 41 between his 4th and his 5th season. So he's a shooter. And I've seen people compare him to an Aaron Nesmith. And obviously he's someone who has garnered a lot of praise throughout the Indiana Pacers playoff run, but 6'6" guard / wing. Like, I think you're right. Like, those kind of players, especially plug and play guys, are ones that can absolutely help. And so, obviously the Warriors run kind of a difficult system, but again, he's fit into 2 already, and he's helped Duke play in a national championship, or a Final Four, I should say. And so that absolutely is a player I'd be interested in. I think you're right that kind of guy, the 4-year player, what we've seen over the last couple of years, the Trace Jackson Davises, the Quentin Posts, those are players that can help you now and that fit this particular timeline. So I absolutely think Sion James is someone that fits that, but also someone that Mike Dunleavy Jr. could absolutely be picking up come, June 25th or whenever the NBA draft is.
Yeah, I mean, they're Duke guys. They're from the Brotherhood. I brought this up on yesterday's show. If Sion James came in to work out for the Warriors, which he did. The reason that they brought him there in the first place, it has nothing to do with Joe Lacob, probably doesn't have anything to do with Kerr. It's a Dunleavy move there. Like, he has seen this guy play. He knows the inner workings of who he is as a teammate, as a human being, as a worker, all these different tangible assets that a player has that you cannot overlook, that's more than just how many points they averaged, what their vertical was, et cetera, et cetera. But he's a nice blend of just size and pretty good athleticism, like positionally good size, athleticism, anticipation, balance, understanding of the game, selflessness, like all these words that have been attached to the different scouting profiles from different scouts across the NBA. Every single one strikes a chord with Steve Kerr. And then when it comes to Mike Dunleavy, like John Shires told him everything that he needs to know about what he'll bring off the floor and the type of things he should be worried about and how coachable he is and potentially how he'd get along in the Bay Area, that sort of thing. So I like that personally, that he's a Dunleavy guy. Like, Mike has known about this guy all season, and he's probably been kind of on his radar a little bit. The question is, will he slip to 41? Because if he had a good workout and things went well, and unless there's someone else that we're not thinking about right now that's there at 41 as their can't miss prospect, you'd have to think that if Sion's there at 41, he could potentially be the dude.
Yeah, and look, a lot of college players are being forced to play in multiple programs, but it doesn't mean that all of them succeed there. And I think Quentin Post marks the first guy I've seen for the Warriors. And look, Pajemski transferred from Illinois, but he didn't really play there first. They are attracted to guys that are able to fit into different locales. Quentin Post obviously did that between his time in Mississippi and then at Boston College. I also think it's interesting that the few players that we've seen, small sample size, Mike Dunleavy Jr. select, have been from notable programs or Power Four conferences. You look at Boston College, Pods at least had some experience in the Big Ten, and then obviously Trace Jackson Davis with his career at Indiana. So those second round guys in particular, I think Mike Dunleavy Jr. is identifying players that know how to play within a team scheme. And those are guys that are going to immediately fit in a Steve Kerr system. And so whether it's James or someone else who's available, I wouldn't be surprised if it fits that type of player who's a transfer, who's succeeded in multiple stops, and has also played big time basketball, because those are the guys that are going to be ready and they have the resume to prove it.
I think this offseason, when it comes to some of the gambles that the Warriors are going to take, I think you're right. You can't take too many gambles on injured players. You go with one very inexpensive, high ceiling player that if you hit on that, it could completely change the trajectory of the season. But that's got to be an inexpensive player. You can't go with like a Porzingis or someone like that and bring them in with all the injury concerns that they have. Very inexpensive. Another thing is where the Warriors paid Kyle Anderson close to $8 million last season, and he wasn't even seeing the floor by the end of his tenure with Golden State. You can't have any of that. Like, if you're paying someone $7 million, you're breaking up your mid-level exception, 15 million. Let's say they were to break into that range and have 15 million to spend, and they break it up into 7 million on two players. Like, you got to hit on both of those. That's absolutely crucial. And then it comes down to me, like the Looney and Paytons. Can the Warriors improve at those positions or for those needs with the lack of money that those two are really going to provide for the most part? I think your best option may be, specifically with Payton, who we brought up today, if he's cheap and doesn't get any better offers than the Warriors, if we're going that route of testing the market, then I think you bring him back, because, like you said, 62 games this season, best ability is availability. And he had a pretty healthy, effective year for someone that makes $4 million. $9 million, there's a big difference, right? But just a couple $1 million, it completely makes you feel different about how you view Gary Payton as a role player on this upcoming year's team. Anything we missed out on, Giddings? Anything on your mind? You got, I think, one more show with me before the NBA draft on the 25th.
I would just say one thing that the Warriors have to be careful of, like if they, for example, sign Gary Payton II once the new year hits to a more than a vet min deal, or if they sign, say, Kuminga to a larger number than people are expecting, don't be shocked, because the one thing that they did when they acquired Jimmy Butler is they moved not just their age groups into a lot of different directions. They also moved their albatross contracts in completely different ways. So right now, if the Warriors wanted to aggregate players, which they're able to do if they stay under the first apron in a trade, they're going to need salaries to do that. So like signing everyone to a low deal or a high deal may in theory sound smart and sound, logical. However, if you're going to make a move, whether it's this summer or next season during the year, which they obviously proved they could get done, you're going to need mid-sized contracts to acquire whatever missing piece you feel like that is. So
Moody's like one of your most important contracts.
No, exactly. But for example, like the Jimmy Butler deal doesn't happen without you signing Kyle Anderson to an overpriced deal. It doesn't happen without you using Melton to acquire Dennis Schroeder, who wasn't worth the money that he was making. So just because the Warriors may be looking at non-vet mins or paying a player above what people believe them to be, financially speaking, doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad move. I would just hesitate or push people toward hesitation there.
Yeah, a lot can happen this offseason. And then, of course, even if the Warriors kind of run this thing back in a similar way and change a few things around the edges, they're deadline workers, man.
Yeah.
We haven't said it often, but at this point in time, Mike Dunleavy works around the deadline. So a lot can be said, even if the Warriors come into the season with the same exact roster and it does pretty well. You would have to think that they're still willing to do whatever to make this team a serious threat in the Western Conference. Can that happen? It's going to be hard. I think every Warriors fan knows that it is very, very difficult to get an aging team with a bunch of money tied up into 3 aging players back into contention with all these young teams that are probably going to get better. I mean, Houston, they may be in the conversation to add in Kevin Durant. Imagine Kevin Durant in the playoffs, how much different of a series that would have been. It wouldn't have gone 7, I tell you that much. So we'll see. Fleecings need to be involved to get back there, or maybe, just maybe, you find the fountain of youth and 37, 36, 36 years old, 38 in the case of Curry next season. They have one healthy all-NBA type combined season in terms of Draymond on the defensive end and Butler maybe NBA 3 and Curry NBA 1, and that's enough to get it done. But realistically, they gotta make some moves that just work, man. They gotta find this season's Otto Porter, whoever that may be. I don't know. It's gonna be a fun offseason though, man. Good stuff. Appreciate you today.
All right, Chuck, anytime, brother.
Yep, we'll talk soon. This is Locked On Warriors. Thanks everyone for tuning into a live edition, free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. We'll see you.